Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Chat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, then this is the podcast for you. I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me are my co-hosts, Ash Band-Aid Breath Crenshaw.
Hi, y'all.
And Big D Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And each week we take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, or want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatthemovies.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie would take to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. That's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV, we review TV series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Lovecraft Country, Game of Thrones, True Detective, and Watchmen. Find all that information and past episodes at shatontv.com. And finally, to hang out with us live all week long, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, shatthemovies.com/Twitch, where we play video games and host watch parties. And thank you to everybody who tuned in for Back for Blood this week and donated and tipped and subscribed so generously. We really appreciate the support. All that being said, Big D, what movie are we reviewing today?
So, Gene, before we get to this week's movie review, I just want to highlight a new feature that we have on shatthemovies.com. We often get requests from our listeners to say, where do you guys watch these movies? Where do you find them? How can I find them? So we have partnered with a great app, Just Watch, which we actually used before even working with them. It allows you to find out where the movies are, if it's on a streaming site that has subscription, whether you can rent it, buy it. So we actually now have a widget that is on all of the movie pages and the event schedule for all the movies coming up. Now, this will help you find the movies and watch them if you are subscribed. But if you also want to support the podcast, any click-throughs that result in a sale, we get a small portion of. So hopefully, if the listeners out there want to use this, it would be a great benefit to us. And it also helps anyone find the movies. So that can be found at the bottom of each of the event page or the movie for that specific movie. So that being said, this week's commission comes from all the way across the globe. One of our international listeners, Christian from Perth in Western Australia, wanted us to do the 1987 comedy horror, The Monster Squad.
When they wrote in and said, "Hello, Shat Crew. Greetings and salutations from Perth, Western Australia. First of all, I would like to congratulate you on the wonderful job you guys are doing with the podcast. Your countless hours, your dedication, and your creativity has not gone unnoticed. I have admired your work for a few years now, and I have witnessed, just like the thousands of other loyal listeners, that this podcast has grown and has become a fun, entertaining, informative, funny, and shameless show that I always look forward to. It is somewhat amazing how something like this can help people like me endure a long drive to work or help me escape from my worries and daily stresses, even if just for an episode. And for that, I thank you with my small commission." The commission. Being a film nerd myself from an early age, I have a huge list of films that I would love to share with you guys. But I also like to add a challenge. So I decided to pick a movie that wasn't very popular at its release, but became a cult classic and found its audience almost a decade later. Monster Squad from 1987 is the quintessential 80s horror adventure film that every kid my age, in the late 80s, who loved vampires, zombies, werewolves, and monsters had to see. I lived most of my childhood in Italy, so I clearly remember watching this a few years after its release on VHS dubbed in Italian, while drinking a glass of spearmint milk and a slice of sourdough bread with Nutella, a very Italian after-school snack. I have fond memories about the movie because I was a huge horror fan. I had built a treehouse just like the original Monster Squad, which I decorated with film posters, booby traps, and binoculars. My friends and I would always make up stories about the old people in the street and how they would be vampires, zombies, and monsters. We had created our own Monster Squad. Does this movie stand the test of time? The film had a lot of production and distribution issues, and that is why the box office was a failure. But I consider it a fun ride, and I think it's the perfect movie to introduce a child to the horror genre. I would gladly give it a shot score of 1 wipe. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy it. Christian. P.S. I know you may not have seen this one, but if you enjoy it, watch the documentary that was made a few years ago about how it became a cult classic. Wolfman Got Nards. P.P.S. Love you guys. Peace out.
So, Christian, thank you so much for commissioning the Monster Squad. I hadn't seen it before, so I'm glad you brought it to our attention. And while watching it, I was asking myself, like, how could this be more fun? Like, I was already drunk. It was like a perfect October night. The breeze was coming in. All of our spooky decorations were up, just chilling on the couch. And the only way I think it could be improved that my mind never went to is dub this shit in Italian. It would be 10 times funnier. Well, Monster Squad is a 1987 comedy horror directed by Fred Decker and released by TriStar Pictures. The film features pastiches of the Universal monsters, led by Count Dracula, who are confronted by a group of savvy kids out to keep them from controlling the world. While not being a major success during its theatrical run and receiving mixed reviews from critics, the film has gained a positive reception from audiences and has become a cult classic in the years since its release. So, Big D, Ash, we always ask what your memories are of the movie we're covering. Big D, we'll start with you. What do you remember about Monster Squad?
Very little. Like you, I'm shocked. This came out almost exactly on my 14th birthday. I have no memory of it. I didn't have my friends talking about it. I don't know. This should have been right up my alley. This should have been everybody's like, holy shit, you've got to see this. I mean, I loved every teen adventure with like a bicycle where you get to rally up, you go out there, like the Goonies, Explorers. It was perfect. But until this commission, I had never seen it. And like Eugene, I was drinking and having so much fun. I started live tweeting like my notes as I was going. It was such a good time, and especially right around Halloween.
I was at a punk show, and Big D is sending me messages, and I'm like, I'm trying to be cool. Like, I hate when people look at their phones during shows, but I was so excited about Big D being excited about Monster Squad. I kept taking peeks. But yeah, Christian, I was the victim of a Persian childhood. So in the Persian household, the parents don't adapt to the kids' tastes. So there's no like kids movies going on. The parents aren't like, oh, like what do kids like these days? Raya and the Last Dragon, or Frozen? No. It's what I don't question I don't question the quality of any of these movies. I'm just saying, growing up as a kid, I watched what my mom was watching. Was it The Godfather? Okay, we're watching The Godfather. Was it House? We're watching House. The Monster Squad like had a lot of things not going for it in a Persian household, because if anything was cheesy or like kid focused, or where kids were the heroes, nah, we're not watching that shit. So again, hadn't seen it. So glad we did.
So I did not grow up in a Persian household. I very much grew up in your typical 80s household where everything was about the kids. So every movie like this was something my family would have watched. E.T., they're on bikes. Goonies, they're on bikes. This one, don't know how we didn't watch it because they're also on bikes. And especially considering the fact that like my dad and I growing up watched Abbott and Costello horror movies, like the one like Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein. We watched that all the time when I was a kid. And this is so reminiscent of that, and such a beautiful love letter to movies like that from the late 40s, that I'm so glad. This is one of the reasons I love doing this podcast. It's because like a lot of times commissions will come in and we'll be like super excited about it because it's a movie we loved when we were kids, or we'll be like, oh god, because it's a movie we definitely didn't love as we were kids. Or you get one like this where it's like, how the fuck did I not see this when I was a kid? And it's super fun. So thanks so much for commissioning this one, because I wasn't drunk because I was with my kid, but it was super fun.
All right. For one more taste of Halloween, Big D, let's hit that trailer.
You know who to call when you have ghosts. But who do you call when you have monsters?
We're the Monster Squad. What's a squad? It's like Miami Vice, I think.
They're young and inexperienced.
Naughty virgin.
They're a bit disorganized.
Monsters are not real.
We don't know that, sir.
2,000-year-old dead guys do not get up and walk away by themselves.
But when strange things start happening in town...
There's a monster in my closet.
Ooh, look at that big, scary monster.
What's happening? 2 ways to kill a werewolf. Silver bullet?
They're the only ones ready to do battle.
Something's out there that's killing people. And if it's monsters, nobody's gonna do a thing about it but us.
Soon the creatures of the night shall
Homebound.
Real monsters? Us? Midnight. In the world, remember? Maybe we can be like Mask Squad instead, you know. 2 mask bombs.
We got 1035. Stick back up. Hurry it up.
Or Nature Squad. The book is right. Don't you think it's all true?
By midnight,
You guys!
they won't seem so young anymore. The Monster Squad.
Wolfman's gone mad.
The Monster Squad is a club of preteens who idolize classic monster movies. Club leader Sean, played by Andre Gower, whose younger sister Phoebe, played by Ashley Bank, desperately wants to join the club, is given a diary of legendary monster hunter Dr. Abraham von Helsing, but finds it is written in German. Sean and the rest of the Monster Squad, his best friend and second in command, Patrick, clumsy overweight Horace, tough older kid Rudy, and little Eugene go to visit an elderly man known as the Scary German Guy to translate the diary.
Okay, so I understand that this podcast is called Shat the Movies. Okay, so I don't want to take myself too seriously, but a lot of times I come into the movies and I try to do an authentic breakdown of, how is this movie? What's the quality of it? What's the production value? And I'm thankful that this movie immediately made me change my tune. It said, stop being a stuffy, stuck-up bitch. Don't break down every component of the plot. Have fun, because it's campy, and I love it. When we see the opening scene of the bats in the crypt, I know they're rubber bats on strings. They're not hiding it. And they're talking about the past with Van Helsing, about their fighting evil, and they blew it. You know what you're in for. It's going to be a fun ride. This isn't Citizen Kane. I shouldn't treat it like that, right? But I want to give Van Helsing and anyone else out there who's going to create a monster squad and try to fight, monsters in their neighborhood, be nice to the virgins. How did Van Helsing expect this girl to read these lines perfectly while he's screaming, louder, hurry up, read, louder? She is put on the spot, and this poor girl is doing her best.
I mean, childhood education is a fairly new science. And this was, this is the 19th century. So they're still trying to figure that whole system out. They didn't really know how to encourage children. I think that the best they could do is just scream louder at them. And that was, meant to help them with the recitations of Latin or Gothic or German or whatever the hell they were yelling in.
I just appreciate that you just made Van Helsing like Arnold Schwarzenegger, because anytime you do anything slightly German or Austrian, like it was Van Helsing as Arnold there.
It wasn't there a version of it? It was like an Arnold, like armored up, where was it Hugh Jackman? Who was it who was Van Helsing in one of these?
I think, was it Hugh Jackman?
Oh, yeah, it was Hugh Jackman. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Thank you.
But Hugh Jackman is not Arnold Schwarzenegger.
No, but hold on. Listen. He's got an arsenal with him. So it's like an armored up where they're pulling out gadgets. So that's more like Arnold. But let's take what I just said about not being overly critical and let's roll it back just a little. Okay. I'm not comfortable going all the way. There is zero plot in this entire film. Nothing. We really don't meet the family. Other than we know the one's getting marriage counseling, the cop, they're not happy, they're having problems. It goes straight to the monsters. No explanation. Oh, why are the monsters getting on a plane? I don't know. Why is some shipping company shipping freight in a World War II bomber with working bomb bay doors that can open? I don't know. No one asks, why is that giant crate have Frankenstein labeled on it? Then it gets even better. Dracula happens to go out of the plane and fall and lands in the town where the mummy is on display. The Loch Ness Monster is there. Oh, and this is the very same town that has Van Helsing's original diary, which was sold at a garage sale to Sean's mother. And then also, this is the town where the amulet's hidden. It doesn't make any sense, but you know what? That's the point. It doesn't matter.
Wait, you thought that Dracula accidentally got dropped off there? You think he accidentally made noise in the back of the plane? This is all part of his plan, man. He's like, I'm going to get on this plane with the Frankenstein monster. I'm going to rustle up some noise. This guy's going to come in the back, when he does, I'm going to stand over the Bombay doors. We're going to drop shit into the water. I'm going to go turn into a bat, fly down there. He's a master planner. He's the head of the Legion of Evil.
Well, and that's like the whole point of these movies, right? Like, of course, there's an amulet that's hidden there. Of course, this is the town he's supposed to be in. I mean, that's like part of the fun. This is where you get all of those things, like all the way up through like Buffy, where like she just happens to move over the Hellmouth, and all these things happen to converge there. I mean, it's just, it's kind of a tradition that those really convenient things happen, and we're just supposed to go, well, yeah, sure, of course that makes sense.
Of course.
It's like when you're a kid, you got your Thundercats toy, you got your Lion-O, and you're walking him across the carpet. He's going to do a thing, and all of a sudden there's a couch there. How do you explain the couch? He's like, I don't know, it's a mountain or something, and he's going to like go up it, and then all of his other friends are going to be on the top of the couch because that's where the other toys are, and it just comes together. This is like we talked about when we did Transformers, like stories written like this, they tap into a deep part of our brains where that childhood narrator still lives, who just like makes sense of whatever the fuck is going on. And like Ash said, it's just a matter, of convenience. And the movie is just trying to move us along to all the fun shit and skip everything else that really doesn't need to be explained. I mean, that opening, like you mentioned, Big D, with Van Helsing and the Virgin and all the guys with their guns, and like there's a fucking portal that opens up. None of that shit makes sense, and they make no attempt to explain it. And what I love is the way they did names in this movie, because as a podcast, we've been doing this for a while. It's hard to remember all the character names. And so we end up referring to people as the actor's name, right? We're just like, oh, okay, well, that was John Goodman. That was Arnold Schwarzenegger. I like that they just made fat kid. And like the old German man was just scary German guy. Because that's what kids do when they're talking about, people in the neighborhood. You don't know that guy's name. He's just that guy.
I was drinking, like I told you. Okay, I had opened up a nice new bottle, twist cap of Pinot Grigio. I was sitting on the couch alone. It was a nice, like you said, October evening. I watched this on HBO Max. I swear that by the end, the subtitle label, when the dialogue came up for Horace, said "Fat Kid." Am I correct?
Yeah, I watched it on HBO Max as well, and yeah, it said "Fat Kid."
Okay, I almost had to double check that because I was like, that can't be. But like you said, Gene, it was
Amazon.
You watched on Amazon?
I watched it on Prime. Yeah, but it said the same thing. It said Fat Kid on mine too.
It's great, and I love that. Every one of these movies has a fat kid. Our next movie has a fat kid. Goonies had a fat kid. It was great, and it follows that formula. When I immediately saw the cool kid Rudy, I was like, "Yep, this is Explorers. The cool kid's gonna befriend the nerds, and they're gonna create the Monster Squad." But it just felt so good. It was dirty, but I felt good doing it.
Yeah, but there's something different about this movie. And y'all know I love The Goonies. I think The Goonies is a great film. But one thing this movie does a lot better than The Goonies is like Chunk is the butt of every joke in The Goonies. Even like when he finds the creature, like there's no real like redemption moment for him. But like Horace or Whore's ass, which was a really great 80s joke, that whole thing. I mean, he has moments where like he is a cool kid, like he is redeemed in the end. And I like that about this because I was like, okay, great. Another fat kid, another, fat joke, that's going to just go the whole film. But Horace was a different type of character than we've seen before.
Big D, I just went ahead and checked on the shathmovies.com Just Watch widget. And the Monster Squad is available on Prime Video for free, not on HBO Max.
Wow, well, I get my HBO Max subscription for free, so.
No, it's not on HBO Max at all. Is what I'm saying.
Really? Where the hell did I watch this?
You can check the Just Watch widget on shathmovies.com and then click it to watch the movie. And if you don't have Amazon Prime Video and want to rent it from Amazon Prime, Apple TV, Google Play, Vudu, Microsoft, YouTube, Pluto TV, DirecTV, Paramount, or Paramount Plus, please go to shatthemovies.com and use the Just Watch widget to click and view.
Oh,
thank you.
I also appreciate that humble brag there, Big D. I get my HBO Max subscription for free. Like,
it's not a humble brag.
$14.99 like the rest of us.
I pirated. I'm not like bragging like, ooh, it's a big spend.
He's secretly giving Roger back alley HJs.
It is Roger's account. Yes, it is Roger's account. And I always wonder the day when he's going to call me and be like, dude, fucking stop it. I can see you in my movie list that you're watching all of these films.
Yeah, that day is November 3rd.
Well, I have to say, I really did relate to these kids because I wasn't in a monster squad, but I've shared before that I was super cool and in a D&D club from this age. Like I started when I was like 12 or 13 years old, and I still play with some of those people monthly. And here's the deal. We were weird. Like we were weird kids. We were geeks, and like there was something different about us. And like these guys take these monsters so seriously, like we took our characters super seriously that we played as and that we were crafting. And we would have conversations like this where we would run through scenarios during the day, like, well, what if this or what if that? And nobody should ever be a ranger and things of that nature, right? And I'm getting some side eye from Gene here, who plays as a ranger. But I love a good weirdo, and I love these kids. And I have to say, one of the things I'm disappointed in today is that thanks to shows like Stranger Things and other things that have become kind of like mainstream, they've made things like this mainstream. And I think I shared this previously on a pod, but at one of the high schools I work at, there's a D&D club, and they have like over 100 members. And I went to one of their meetings, and like I stuck my head in, and I was like, oh, how times have changed, because now it's like the cool thing to do. And I don't know. There's a part of me that's like, you don't get to be popular and play D&D out in public at a high school. Like, I feel like there's something special about being outcast together, about finding a common obsession that, you know, are your people. And I don't know, it just rubs me the wrong way that all these cool mainstream normies are out there playing D&D today.
I imagine that Big D has a similar experience when he sees other veterans out in public. Do you guys give each other nods? Like, what's up? Do you like yell out your regiment number to each other or anything like that?
No. It's like, no. I mean, it's just the only times, no.
You don't have to let us in on this.
No, I didn't want to get into stolen valor and me questioning whether people are real. I always find myself doubting people, because usually when people talk about what they've done, they're usually full of shit. But no, it's just a lot of times, like if I see somebody with the hat, I'll just say thank you for your service.
What if they got like medals pinned on their cargo shorts?
Then I'll say, motherfucker, show me your DD-214.
Yeah, Ash, I can relate to this 100% because I'm a part of a lot of like dumb small things. Like if I see other jujitsu people, I'm like, If I see other crowd people, I'm like, But the one that gets me is if I'm out at like brunch or something in like LA and I see goths in the wild. Like no matter how distant their goth tribe is, like if they're like way out there, like, you know, fucking rivet heads or like gravers, I'm like, it's still like this little kinship. I'm like, oh fuck, it's another goth. Cool. Like, what's up?
Yeah.
And but even that's getting like kind of popular now. Like there's like these like witchy craft fair people, and I mistake them for goths all the time. It's very scary.
I wore a pair of boots that I have had since high school to school the other day because it was an all black day. And I had multiple girls in this high school it was a blackout day. And all these girls in the hallway were stopping me and like, hey, where'd you get your boots? Like, da-na-na-na-na. And I was like, no, like, you don't get to wear these, like, you know. So it's becoming like a look. It's like these people that are posting online about how to become like, you know, grunge is back. And so all these girls are wearing things like from like the early 90s and trying to recreate, you know, Kurt's sweater from like the HBO, you know, Unplugged series. Like that's a big thing that people do now. And it's just gross. It makes me want to throw up.
Is there an age where you age out of gothness? Like I'm picturing that one day when Gene is out having brunch and mimosas in LA, and these young goths look at this. He's now a middle-aged man almost, and he's gonna be like, hey, he's gonna like kind of wink at them, and they're gonna be like, what are you, normie? Oh, stop riding this fucking wave.
So there is a PhD student named Leah Bush who researches the elder goth subculture. And there was actually an article in the Washington Post about her findings, but basically they're trying to figure out how elder goths actually age better than most people. Not in the sense like that they look better necessarily, which believe me, they don't. But that like they live better. That something about the goth subculture when you actually age is you're allowed to still be young. You're allowed to still be accepted. And it's kind of a beautiful thing. And so, yeah, you don't age out of it. It's just a forever status.
It's not a phase.
It's not a phase.
It's a lifestyle.
Oh my God.
Well, I have to say the other thing I really liked about this opening part of the movie is the scary German guy character, because this movie unabashedly follows every single trope of films like this, because now you've got an older guy with an accent who knows all, that's there to help guide them along the way. And I know I already mentioned Buffy, and I promise this will be the last time I mention it on this pod, but I have to imagine that Joss Whedon just completely devoured films like this growing up, because you see the creation of the Watchers in Buffy, because there's a little Giles in this guy. And it makes watching movies like this that are meant to kind of pull at our nostalgia, heartstrings, it makes them even more fun because you know what came after them and what it would kind of grow into. And I thought he was just an absolutely hilarious character.
It was such a great scene with these kids in the scary German guy's house, and he's serving them pie, and they're going over the book together, and the kids are like having a pretty good time. The scary German guy is having a great time. And as he's going, as they're walking away, you're like, there's something interesting about that guy. And they turn to him and they're like, "You sure know a lot about monsters, mister." And he's like, "I suppose I do." He goes to close the door and you see the concentration camp tattoo on his arm. I was not expecting that. And I just started laughing, and I shouldn't have laughed, but I did. I mean, like, what a fucking weird drop. And as I thought more about it, though, I'm like, wait a second. So this is 1987. So this is 42 years after VE Day, right? So 42 years roughly after Auschwitz was discovered by the Allied forces. So I mean, we're talking about just my lifetime. That's not that far back. And in the sense, like, this would, in the 80s, like, it was very possible that you would run into a concentration camp survivor, and not that far fetched, but still incredibly awkward placement. I was so glad that I was in the safety of a living room and not in a theater and laughing, because that would have been very embarrassing.
Dude, but the movie has a couple of these moments that they never go back to it. You're like, okay, that's great. The mother and the father are like screaming at each other about counseling, and like, oh, I think they're going to get to, nope, never go back to it. The movie just gives you a little nugget thinking it'll become a plot point, and it doesn't. So yeah, okay, random German guy is a Holocaust survivor. Move on. Monster time.
I suppose I do. The diary describes an indestructible amulet that becomes vulnerable once every 100 years. The kids learn that they must find a virgin and use the amulet to cast the monsters into limbo. Van Helsing had unsuccessfully attempted this 100 years ago to defeat Count Dracula. His apprentices then emigrated to the United States to hide the amulet. Dracula seeks to obtain the amulet and assembles his most monstrous allies: Frankenstein's monster, played by Tom Noonan, the Mummy, the Gill Man, the Wolf Man, and 3 schoolgirls the Count transforms into his vampiric consorts. So we talked in Scream about how I missed horror movies where every actor took himself seriously. To me, like, Donald Pleasance in Halloween 4 is way funnier than Matthew Lillard in Scream. And these monsters in Monster Squad are committed. Like, Dracula, straight face, deadpan,
Yes.
pulls wires out of his cane, hooks them to the Frankenstein monster's head, and then calls down lightning while, like, Gill Man, the Mummy, and Wolfman are all gathered around in a circle. And they're in these stiff suits, so they can't really emote very well. They're trying so hard to give, like, serious and thrilling performances despite these absolutely restrictive costumes, which just really consists of them just moving around at the hips and waving their arms around while they dub audio over it.
But Gene, yeah, the commitment by the actors is there, but also they look great. They look fantastic. The makeup, the special effects, it's really good. But you early on, Gene, you called it, I think, the Monster Legion of Doom. This super A-list squad of monsters. I got to question some of their credentials. On the scale of these monsters, like the Mummy, he's really not that scary. He's not too strong. He's not fast. He just kind of shambles about. He gets lost. I don't feel scared of him. I don't know why is he in some random kid's closet? How is this helping the team's mission to bring on, like, darkness? It doesn't make any sense. And he's got a terrible glaring weakness. He's like a knitted sweater from your grandma. You pull on one of those strings, he just comes apart. He does not deserve to be on the team, and he was not scary.
Yeah, I will say the one thing that this movie gets a ding for me on is that the actual mummy monsters, they're pretty badass. Like they can cast spells, they can control elements, especially sand. And I get it. Like part of the joke is that in suburbia, unless there's like a sandbox around, like it's not going to be scary. Like I understand that. But they're actually pretty dangerous sorcerers. And this guy was just your typical like, mummy that's like walking around with his arms out in front of him. And they do have a body under the wrappings in other films, right? It's just a gross body. And I was super bummed that they pulled his bandages and then all like it's just like his little head, bouncing along the ground. Because I mean, they didn't mummify people by beheading them and then wrapping, like paper macheing the rest of the mummy body. Like there was an actual body they wrapped in wrappings.
I'll be honest, at this point, I was so drunk that I turned to Sarah and I was like, what the fuck does mommy do? And she says, eat souls. And I go, oh, okay.
Yeah. And controls elements. Everybody should go back and watch Brendan Fraser.
I think he had dried out. He had his bones and everything had turned to some
dry. That isn't how matter works. Like bones don't just disintegrate like that.
You were just lecturing me about controlling elements and all this other shit. That's not how science works. We're in a realm
he's magical. Because you're not talking about magic here. You're talking about basic body composition, and they preserve them. That's what mummification is. They preserve them. He needs his little, his little jars, his canoptic jars with his little organs. He needs to get them, put them back in his body. Mummies are cool. Everyone look at me like I'm stupid. Mummies are cool. This mummy wasn't, but other than this one, mummies are neat.
No, this whole gang seems willing to just kill themselves. I mean, Wolfman doesn't want to be there. The mummy doesn't want to be there. But as a whole, this movie, it fucking oozes everything that is awesome 80s movie. Everything. I'm watching it. I'm like, okay, I'm going to keep like a little checklist here with my notes. I'm like, treehouse, a fucking awesome treehouse. This thing is great. We get the obvious mom from the 80s movies, Mary Ellen Trainor. This is Mrs. Walsh from the Goonies is in this. We get shitty fighting parents talking about divorce. We get them forgetting about their kids. They're leaving them alone, forgetting about them for days, or giving them a giant lit candle for their 5-year-old in their room alone. You get the fat kid, but this fat kid is extra special. He hides food in his pockets that later comes into play, like some garlic pizza. He's a special fat kid. We get the pervy guy who's out there trying to get out the girls when he's looking out the window at Lisa, and Lisa must get naked in front of the window about 12 times a day. He's got the camera on the tripod. He's bought in. This is perfect. We get the creepy neighbor. This is everything. This is in The Burbs. This is in Home Alone. All you had to do was be a non-speaking, like some generic foreigner who doesn't like take care of their lawn, and you were evil. It's perfect. We get montages. They're riding their bikes. They're gearing up. This is fucking awesome. It made me so nostalgic, and it was just a great feeling to think back to what made the 80s so good.
Yeah, and I think that that montage, we've seen a lot of them, right? Like, I think that we have become true judges of an 80s montage. And this one is top notch, you guys. You've got melting spoons in a classroom to make bullets. You've got Frankenstein's monster in drag. You've got copy machine action. And you've got a song. And this is one of the most important parts of a montage. A song that makes no fucking sense for what they're doing on screen. Because I don't know what they're rocking till they drop. I guess they're dropping monsters, but it makes no sense. And it was classic 80s. It made me smile the whole time. I was like kind of like nodding my head, like feeling a little bit of that 80s synth beat. And then I look over at my kid, who is almost 6 and looks really confused. And I said, "What's wrong, bud?" And he said, "I think they made a mistake and turned the music up too loud because I can't hear what they're saying." And I was like, how times have changed, because he doesn't know what a montage is, because they don't do this anymore, right? Like, we don't get these cool badass montages prepping to go drop the monsters in the street. Instead, we get nothing but dialogue, but I thought it was badass.
Yeah.
Just tell him when you grow up, this is going to help you a lot when you're clubbing.
True.
You don't have to say anything.
Nope. You just got to bop along to the music. Melt some bullets.
Well, Frankenstein's monster wanders into the forest where he encounters Phoebe. She shows him the kindness he has always sought, and they become friends. Frank chooses to help the monster squad instead of Dracula. The Wolf Man also a recalcitrant follower of Dracula, has been making calls to the police about the forthcoming carnage. Meanwhile, the amulet is revealed in a stone room beneath the house that Dracula and the other monsters occupy. The monster squad break into the house, acquire the amulet, and narrowly escape Dracula's grasp.
So I just talked about how awesome parents in the 80s were and in the movies. I know back then it was like a less scary time for people where they could just let their kids out at night. They could maybe not see them for a day or two and it wasn't a big thing. But this mother takes it to an extreme that I found myself questioning. Her 5-year-old is hanging out in a clubhouse with an adult man. Let's put aside that it is a living actual monster. It's an adult man. During this 2 days, at not one time did she say, who's that adult man out there? Or the fact that she's alone by a swamp in Louisiana with alligators. Was this neglect, or was this what the 80s said was an average parent?
I think that, first of all, I want to take issue with your statement of the 80s weren't as scary of a time. The 80s were fucking terrifying of a time. Like, lots of people were getting murdered.
Yeah,
there were murders.
What I mean is, people, yes, shit was happening, but people were just like, It was just like now everything's, put your helmet on. Don't go biking. Don't climb that tree. People now are fucking, they're
people
too
are helicopter
protective.
moms. They're helicopter moms now.
Yeah,
When like in the
then,
Hold on. I don't understand your complaint, because either it's okay to let your child hang out with a grown monster in the treehouse, or you should be wearing a helmet. You can't have it both ways.
No, what I'm saying is she doesn't even notice. She could be okay, be like, oh, look, she's out there with that guy again.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this was my parents, though. I mean, I remember carving pumpkins as a kid. Like, now it's this whole thing where we got to cover the floor in trash bags and we got to get the safety knife and all this. My mom would just hand me a butcher knife and be like, have fun. Like, and I was like 5 years old, because that's what the 80s were like. And I disagree, sir, with something you said earlier, which is these shitty parents. I get the mom's not cool, but I fucking love this dad. He talks normal to his kid. He's like, we're going to marriage counseling. He knows his kid isn't following the rules like directly, but instead of getting on him at the beginning, like he brings him a burger and sits on the roof and watches the movie with him. And I got really nostalgic because like, this was my dad. This is exactly what my dad was like. He never talked to us like we were children. And I don't mean like he told us inappropriate things, but he treated us like we had like agency and an identity separate from his own from a really young age. He let us watch movies. He let us explore things. He bought me a pack of cigarettes because I said I wanted to smoke, and I almost choked and didn't smoke again until I was like 18. Like, it was a really good life lesson. I was 14 at the time, was not 5. But the whole point is that this dad is like a good dad. He's cool. And a lot of 80s dads were like this. And I feel like dads today, just like moms, have all like this Pinterest pressure to like be like these perfect parents in every single way. And I think I'm a much cooler person because I had a dad like that. And I think these kids are cool, and they're so like subversive with like the culture they're in because they've got parents like this. And I like him.
One of my favorite things about Instagram is following my friends when they post photos of their parents, like in the 70s and 80s. And it's always like a dude in like jorts, no shirt. Yeah. He's got like a Budweiser hat on and a mustache, and he just looks cool as fuck, like next to a dirt bike. And I'm like, fuck yeah. Like, that's all that should be expected of a dad. Do that. Be that guy. Because what do they always post about him? My dad's the shit. He was so fucking cool. I didn't realize it back then, but he was the shit. Like, I want to hang out with every 70s dad, I think. Maybe not the shitty ones that were like touching kids and beating them up, but all the other dads. I want to hang out with those guys.
Agreed.
Back to Frankenstein. How did he get in the treehouse? I've been thinking about this for like a week. He's a very large monster.
Yeah, that's some construction.
It's not a big treehouse. He just is in there all of a sudden. And also, they're a monster squad. They should know everything about monsters. These dudes, as students of monsters, don't know the one thing Frankenstein's monster is best known for. They fucking left him alone with a little girl near a pond. No.
Gene, this is why I adore you, because I was worried nobody else would get this reference. And I busted out laughing because when the monster walks up, the way that they shoot like the sunlight, it looks like water reflecting on her.
Yep.
And then they pan up and he's holding her hand. And if you've not read the book Frankenstein in a long time, this is directly taken from there. And I got really nervous because I was like, shit, is this movie about to get dark? And he's going to like snap her head like a grape or something like that. But instead, he's
like a
cool.
Malkovich.
Right, exactly, right? Is he gonna fucking Linium, and it all of a sudden be a bunch of ketchup packets, squeezing out of his hand? But no, he wasn't. He's just like a good dude. And you talked about how does Frank get in the treehouse itself. Like, I wish we would have gotten to see that because there's all these campy moments throughout here, and I think that would have been another really excellent one. And this is where my frustration comes in, is because these kids as a cast, these are as good as the cast of kids in the Goonies. And Sean Astin, I'm not a big fan of his adult acting because Rudy, but he was fantastic in the Goonies. Like you feel for him. And the same with these kids. I cannot believe that this wasn't as big because even the script is as good as in the Goonies. When you've got that line, kick him in the nards, or it was boss, I saw Dracula. I mean, they had me laughing out loud. It was absolutely perfect. It was just enough camp. It never got old because there was enough in there that wasn't just campy. It was really self-aware. And I just wish that everybody could see this movie.
I fucking love the idea of the Wolfman, Frankenstein's monster, Dracula, and Gill Man like sharing a house that just happened to be there. They're living there. And there's that scene where the kids are in the house. They're at the confluence of like 3 hallways, and the camera is just panning from one to the other. And they look down one hallway, it's Dracula. And they look down the other hallway, it's Wolfman. They look down the third hallway, and it's Dracula's brides. And at this point, they're like, and I'm just screaming along at the screen, with like 2 beers in my hands. Like I'm like ready to fucking go. And again, guys, if you haven't seen this movie, highly recommend get deeply inebriated on a beautiful October night. Well, I guess it's November now. On a beautiful November night. And fucking at this point in the movie, if you're not screaming, you're doing something wrong. As midnight approaches, the squad makes its way to a local church for a final stand. Dracula destroys their clubhouse with dynamite, drawing the attention of Sean's father, police detective Dell, who has been charged with investigating the strange occurrences in town, but remains quite skeptical about their supernatural causes until he sees Dracula in person. The doors to the cathedral are locked, leaving the squad vulnerable. They enlist Patrick's beautiful elder sister, Lisa, played by Lisa Fuller, to help them, but the incantation fails since Lisa is actually not a virgin. The squad deduces that Phoebe must complete the task of opening the portal, and the German guy helps her read the incantation as the rest of the squad fends off the monsters. So at this point in the movie, I am in absolute tears from laughter. Dracula gets in his ghost hearse, drives over to the house, walks across a suburban yard. There's like swings and a tricycle and shit. He's got a giant, like cartoonishly large lit stick of dynamite. He throws it into the children's clubhouse and drops a one-liner, "Meeting adjourned." It is my all-time favorite Shat elements, all wrapped up in one scene.
Oh my God, he just doesn't give a fuck. He just doesn't care. It's glorious. But then Frankenstein, who I want to ask you guys just a quick question. Was Frankenstein betraying Dracula? Was he a secret agent? Was he?
No, he was betraying him.
Because the whole team seems to hate Dracula. Wolfman wants to die. He doesn't want to be there. He's turning himself in. The mummy is just like hiding in kids' closet. This is not the fucking A-team. But when Frankenstein goes, "Master wants children dead," I was like, fuck, I guess I'm not going to watch this with Emma.
I think that's ridiculous because I immediately knew I would watch this with Ben. And like I just think it's so funny because I think both of us are really good parents, but fuck, we parent so differently. I accidentally watched Gladiator with Finn as well this weekend. Long story. But Dracula, absolutely incredible. The way that he holds that dynamite like it's like a nice glass of scotch, and he just he doesn't throw it. He like very gingerly tosses it, like with like a very like upward motion. Like it was so funny. And then he goes and stands in front of the house and his cloak is just blowing behind him and his makeup is streaked because it's not done that well. And it is so ridiculous. And I love how it plays on how different we see these monsters by the 80s, right? You know, they're doing this huge homage to the 40s and the costumes of the 40s where a lot of the coloring on camera isn't as bright as it has gotten in the 80s. So their makeup had to look differently and their costumes had to be certain colors. And by keeping it like that, it is a sight gag that absolutely works when it's matched with how serious the actors are and how serious they deliver their lines. And then my favorite Shat attempted death of all time. Okay. Kid walks in, sees the Wolfman, who, by the way, is like super swole with a tiny little waist. And the kid goes, "Hey, asshole," and kicks him out the window. And y'all, we get a full-on Wolfman explosion. And clearly, they took a big pillow and put some pants on it, tightened it up at the waist, and exploded it. And because like feathers are raining down, and I don't care. It's perfect. My son and I rewatched this 5 times because it's so good. We need a GIF of this so that we can constantly retweet this out. Because whenever a shitty day happens, I'm just going to send both of you, "Hey, asshole."
It's not even cut right. Like there's like a weird pause in between. It's like kick, the window breaks, then we're outside, the window breaks again. And then it's like a pillow. And I was so confused. So I was like, why what just blew up? Was it feathers? And then you see like chunks of Wolfman everywhere. And it's such a great callback to earlier in the movie when they can only think of one way to kill a werewolf. They're like, is there 2 ways? I don't know, like a traffic accident? Because let's be frank, like vampires like have so many vulnerabilities. Like it's like, oh, it's the cross, it's the garlic, it's daylight, it's a steak, decapitate him, set him on fire. Werewolves, 1, silver bullets. Apparently that's it. I did not know they could just put themselves back together.
I don't know.
Oh, well, and we also get that great close-up of like clearly some acrylic press-on nails that somebody painted. And that's his hand. Like the costumes in this are so bad. And if you look closely, underneath his little hand are feathers. So they just didn't give a fuck. Didn't give a fuck. And it's beautiful.
I think it was a pillow with like chopped meat and some organs from the market. It was glorious, and I was not expecting him to reconstitute and reform, but he does. He then busts out into the street. Now we've got the monsters are rampaging down the middle of Main Street towards the church, towards the children. The police show up. I have never seen a police force and a group of police officers more willing to use non-lethal force. They're doing everything to subdue Dracula. They're trying the nightsticks. They're punching them. Everything is non-lethal. He is dispatching. Dracula is killing them one by one, snapping their necks, just laying them in the street. There's never been a movie that calls for deadly force more than this. Why weren't they shooting at Dracula?
Okay, so I got this one. So this is why we love Buffy. Because they set up a world where like the bullets aren't going to make a difference. So you're forced into hand-to-hand combat, which makes for really silly fight choreography. Like if you're watching Buffy, you're like, why are they doing all these spin kicks and like crazy flips and shit? Well, you have to. That's how you kill vampires in this world, right? Because I remember the first time I saw Underworld, like I was at the theater and I'm like, holy shit, like vampires versus werewolves, but it's like going to be real, right? It's not that Buffy shit. Like it's going to be like war. And then it was just like a gunfight. Yeah. Because they're like, okay, we got like special bullets that kill each other. And I was like, well, this is kind of boring. They're just shooting at each other. So that's why. But we also got to see some amazing like pirouettes. Like those cops were dancing their way to Dracula.
And I want to remind you that in Underworld, the werewolves do not randomly explode at any time, which also makes it a much less enjoyable film. Yeah, what are they called? Lichens?
Yeah, they're lichens. Yeah. But hold on. The police force, they don't think they're monsters. If they thought they were monsters, they'd definitely be shooting them. But why would you be this passive? It makes no sense.
They see him turn into a bat.
Yes, exactly.
What do you mean they don't think they're monsters? Like, they clearly know they're monsters by that point.
Yeah, I mean, you figure the cops talk to each other like, hey, that Wolfman guy, we shot him, and then he just walked away. So clearly that's not working out. There's a mummy. There's a Dracula. And I actually felt really bad about, like, Gill Man, because I don't think he'd ever encountered a gun. Like, he didn't understand the danger he was in. He just walked up and was like, hey, I'm dangerous. And then a horse just shot him. He's like, fuck.
I'm dead.
Yeah.
Dude was out of his element. He should have stayed in the sewer where he belonged. In the ensuing battle, Dracula's army is defeated. The Count tries to destroy the amulet, but Frankenstein's monster intervenes, impaling him on a wrought iron cross. Phoebe opens the portal, and Dracula attempts to drag Sean in with him. Sean impales Dracula with a wooden stake, and Van Helsing appears from limbo, gives a thumbs up, and pulls Dracula to his doom. As Frankenstein's monster is drawn into the portal, Phoebe holds on to him and pleads for him to stay. As Frank is sucked into the portal, it closes, ensuring the world's safety. In the aftermath, the U.S. Army arrives on the scene, having received a letter from Eugene earlier on asking for their help against the monsters.
So obviously, most of this movie is unscary. I know that's not a word, but lacking in fear. But that last scene with Dracula walking and killing people, he was pretty badass in that moment. Like, he actually kind of embodied Dracula. But then he picks up Phoebe. He says, "Let it go, you bitch," to a 5-year-old little girl. And I'm like, hell yes, Monster Squad, because it's so ridiculous. It is so original. But I don't know about you guys, but we've been doing this a while, and sometimes it's like, okay, well, this is what's going to happen. You can kind of predict like what's going to happen next. And I swear to you, I thought that as Frankenstein was like blowing away into the portal, that his arm was going to rip off in Phoebe's hand, because there's a little suture line right there at his forearm. And I was like, oh, she's going to be left with Frankenstein's hand. But instead, he just gets sucked in with a teddy bear.
Ash, not only do we get Dracula calling a little girl a bitch, these kids are free to just curse throughout the movie, which I really, really love. There's like lines like, "God damn it, would you shut up?" Or "All your sister does is hang around and let guys touch her tits." Or "Don't be a chicken shit." And my favorite, which is "Good luck, butt love." It's so great because, again, we watch a lot of like kids movies in this era of nostalgia, but I don't think I've seen one where kids were just free to talk like kids actually do at that age, and I loved it.
Or the fact that the military will just show up at some random like 8-year-old kid's letter about monsters. Is that how this works? But Ash, you said, when Frankenstein, he's floating into this vortex, which is strong enough to suck up the Germans' Jeep and light poles, but these kids are completely fine. I thought and I feared he was going to say like an E.T. line, like, "I'll be right here." And as he goes, it goes the other way. Fucking Van Helsing pops back out, grabs Dracula, and gives a thumbs up. I was like, wow, not expecting this. They went against my total expectations, but somehow it shouldn't work, but it does.
Yeah, there is no way that you can write a dramatic, climactic scene and not realize how hilarious that thumbs up is, right? He just pops up out of nowhere, totally unnecessary. Gives the thumbs up. They give a thumbs up back, which also is a great GIF. You can find it. I've been using it all week. And then you've also got Frank like catching Scraps, the stuffed animal, like as he says goodbye. If you had any doubts, like Decker, the writer director, like he's clever as hell. This is supposed to be funny, and I think this is almost meant as like if you were taking it seriously so far, please understand.
Yeah.
This is a joke. This is funny. This is a pastiche, right? It is not a parody. It is saying, I love movies like this. We're just having fun. Hope you enjoyed the show.
Well, and I know none of us got to see this in theater, but you have to believe that in the theater that the audience must have just like lost it or like applauded or like just like the whole like chorus of laughter, because it's so good. And it isn't just like a normal thumbs up, like it's one of those like forced like hard thumbs up like that they give in like an 80s like athletic movie, like, "You're doing great, kid, congrats on winning, but also becoming a better person."
Yeah, this guy's been living for 100 years in limbo, which is like this other dimension met only for like demons and hellspawn. He springs back up for a second to grab Dracula, and he's like, "Yeah,
it was
Van
great."
Helsing from the 19th century."
So I've been watching recently on Netflix. They have something called The Movies That Made Us. It's the same series that The Toys That Made Us, and it does 80s and 90s toys, and it covers movies about how hit movies came to be. And the recent batch of them is all horror. So it's like Halloween, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. And so many of these movies come together, and it is a perfect storm of events that makes them into the hit that they are and the cultural phenomenon. I feel so bad. After what Christian said about the trouble that this movie had in the documentary, I'm going to go watch it because this cast got done dirty. There is no reason that this movie should not have been as big as the Goonies, that it should not have set the careers of these kids off. Because just in the way the little facts make something work, something worked against this that corrupted, and everybody in the cast paid for it.
Well, now's the time we give our wipe scores for the Monster Squad. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It's opening up limbo successfully with your very own version and sucking all of the monsters into their hell dimension. And 5 wipes is an absolute disaster, is an exploding pillow werewolf with meat and guts all over the place. Ash, we'll start with you. How many wipes do you give the Monster Squad?
I am beyond excited to have found this movie. There is a series of films that we watch every year as a family around Halloween, and they are A Nightmare Before Christmas, they are Rocky Horror Picture Show, Ghostbusters, and we've now got a 4th because this was cheesy, it was funny, it had some really cute little scares for Finn and one day his little sister Ellie, and I'm just really bummed that the 3 of us like here on this pod, we're not able to go and watch this in a theater together because this is a movie like Rocky Horror in some ways that's kind of like meant to be experienced together. Like I could see that being like a really fun yearly tradition for a film like this. And y'all, that end credit song, fucking awesome, right? We need to play that as our outro to this episode. Like, gotta get up, got work to do. It is ridiculously amazing. That just put like this nice little bow on a perfect horror, kid-centric 80s film. And for me, it's nearly perfect. It's 0.5 wipes.
Ash, I love this movie a lot, but I have to respect the true nature of the wipe score. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. And this movie is flawed in 1,000 ways. Like 1,000 wonderful, endearing ways, but it is not perfect. It is the my dad wrote a porno of horror movies. And I can't say it's done with the expertise and perfection of like Raiders of the Lost Ark or the panache of Pulp Fiction. It's just not at that level. But again, 1 wipe means I love the movie. It just means it's just not perfect. And I am with you there. I will be watching this every Halloween from now on. It is high on my list of Halloween movies that if nobody else in the room enjoys, I'll enjoy it alone, drunk in October.
So all our Shat listeners out there, let's try to right a wrong. Tell someone you know who values 80s and 90s movies to watch this. If we can spread the word and do a little part to make people enjoy this, for God's sake, like Emma's school is doing a drive-in next week. They're doing Hocus Pocus. That movie is a pile of shit.
That movie is an amazing gift to society.
No,
I've never seen it.
This would be so much more
It is
fun.
incredible.
No, this is a fun film. It really brought back all the great points of 80s nostalgia and movies without being too serious. You could just, you know what? Movies don't have to be great. They don't have to be perfect or prove something or make you learn or come out of there changed. They can just be fun. And this movie was fun. It was designed to be fun. I think it is a 1 wipe. It was a treasure to find, and I will watch this each year. And you know what, Ash? I'm going to watch this with Emma and see what she thinks.
You should.
I will. When Vanessa's at work, not when Vanessa's here.
All right, with 1 wipe from me, 1 wipe from Big D, and half a wipe from Ash, that gives us an average wipe score of 0.83 repeating wipes for the Monster Squad.
So Gene with a score of 0.83 repeating wipes, that now ties this in the 33 spot, surprisingly. In the 33 spot, surprisingly. Let the hate mail come in with Beetlejuice, E.T., Clueless, and The Hunt for Red October.
I feel like that's perfect. The only thing that should be joining here is the Goonies. Thanks, Jane.
No, Goonies, not that good. No, this is way better than Goonies.
Ooh, I feel dirty saying it, but I had more fun with this.
Oh my God. It's just because this was the first time you saw it. You had this much fun the first time you watched the Goonies.
And it's a different experience. I mean, that's the thing. With the wipe score, all these movies are enjoyable in their own way. So this one was enjoyable in a different way than the Goonies, but fucking thank you very much, Christian, for letting us see this.
Thank you so much.
And Christian, this is one of those rare instances where our wipe score was actually higher than yours. So you nailed it.
You're
on
welcome.
this one. We're right there. You had 1 wipe. We had 0.83. Big D, what do we have coming up next week?
So Gene, next week we are watching a film of a group of boys after learning that a stranger has been accidentally killed near their rural home. 4 Oregon boys decide to go search for the body. On the way, Gordy, Vern, Chris, and Teddy encounter a mean junk man and a marsh full of leeches as they also learn more about each other and their very different home lives. Just a lark at first, the boys' adventure evolves into a defining event in their lives. Commissioned by Scott H., came out in 86, directed by Rob Reiner, and it was based on a short story by Stephen King.
I've never seen this.
It's hard. I'm telling you, this movie, after The Monster Squad, I think it's going to affect my score.
I mean, I do love a Corey Feldman film, so he's in this, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but hey, you're going to have a hard time comparing the acting of the children. I thought the Monster Squad children were great compared. I found myself nitpicking River Phoenix's performance in surprising ways.
I didn't know River Phoenix was in this.
Big D, you got some explaining to do. Well, thank you, Scott H. Thank you, Christian, for your commissions. And thank you, everyone who makes this podcast possible. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. Email us, host@shatthemovies.com. You can support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, completing a free anonymous survey to help attract advertisers, buying our merch, or by commissioning your own movies. Find all that information by visiting our website, shatthemovies.com. Also, you can check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all information on our website, shatontv.com. Wherever fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. And if you stop by iTunes, please leave a 5-star review. That helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Ash and Big D, I'm Gene Lyons. Be sure to join us next week. And do you want to do the Monster Squad music at the end?
No, because we're going to get hit. It causes us, so it always gets cut off. YouTube makes us cut it out, so they won't hear it.
Okay.
Well, that just destroys all the fun.
In all our lives, there's a fall from innocence. A time after which we are never the same. It happened in the summer of 1959. A long time ago. But only if you measure it in terms of years.
You guys want to go see a dead body?
I bet you anything that if we find him, we'll get our pictures in the paper. Yeah, we can even be on TV. Sure, we'll be heroes. Yeah. Just supposing that I told the story. Do you think that anyone would have believed it?
This is really a good time.
The most a blast.
I'm never gonna get out of this town, am I, Corey? You can do anything you want, man.
I just wish that I could go someplace where nobody knows me.
This is 1987. So it's 22 years after VE Day, like Victory in Europe Day, right? So this is like 45 is when Auschwitz was discovered by Allied forces. So, wait, is that right?
God damn it.
Oh,
Keep
42
going with
years.
it.
No,
Keep
it's
going with it,
42 years.
motherfucker.
No,
I
math
had
is
you.
fucked.
Yeah, exactly. I was ready to drop
Big
it on
D
you.
back it up.
sent me Big D sent me this rage of text, like this whole thing, like just wait, don't say anything about it in the notes because I'm gonna get him. I'm gonna get him on this math.
The whole point of putting the notes in is so you're supposed to be like,
Oh
hey.
no, he made me promise not to comment on it. He's like, I'm gonna call him out live on this show.
No.
I'm gonna make him look dumb.
All right, so
No, I was just going to discuss the Gene's math. Yes, it was May 8th, 45.
Wait, no. So we're gonna go back. Yeah. So, no. So,